Morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this morning and today entitled Preparation, Response, and...
Also, just do a quick check on mine now that I have such device, please. Miss Francis, you could pick up something off the printer for me, please. Thanks.
Okay.
Oh,
Michelle, you good?
I need to mute, yes.
All right. Okay, so we're going to begin. Is everybody set to begin? If I had nothing in 5 seconds, I'm starting. Good day, everyone. Welcome to our webinar entitled Preparation, Response, and Recovery, Lessons Learned from Hurricane Beryl. This webinar is presented by the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, America's Regional Committee, UN-GGIM Americas, through its Caribbean Geospatial Development Initiative, CARIGEO, Steering Committee, in collaboration with the UN-GGIM Working Group on Geospatial Information for Disaster Risk Management and the United Nations ECLAC Commission, Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC. I am Makathian Alexander, member of the CARIGEO Steering Committee, and I will be your moderator for the day. Today, we will be focusing on reinforcing known principles of disaster risk management. We will be sharing lessons learned from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as well as Jamaica, member states that suffered major impacts from Hurricane Beryl in 2024, and from regional and international agencies who provided support during the preparation, response, and recovery phases of Hurricane Beryl. I wish to acknowledge the presence of the distinguished representatives of UN-ECLAC, the UN-GGIM Americas, the UN-GGIM Working Group on Geospatial Information for Disaster Risk Management, the UN-GGIM Americas Working Group on Disasters, the UN-GGIM Americas Private Sector Network, the Jamaica Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Operations, the National Spatial Data Management Branch as well, and the United Nations Resident Coordinator's Office, the USGS, MAP Action. We're expecting the CDB to be here with us as well, and the Barbados Lands and Survey Department. So welcome, thank you for your presence, and I look forward to your participation in this webinar. We shall get going immediately with our opening remarks from Leonardo, Vice President of UN-GGIM Americas.
Thank you, Marcasian. Dear colleagues and distinguished participants, first, I would like to extend my initial greetings to the organizers, Michelle, Marta, Simon, and Marcasian, as well as all the support from ECLAC. I'm pleased to extend a warm welcome on behalf of UN-GGIM Americas. While we regret that President Sofia Nilu cannot join due to prior commitments, we appreciate the opportunity to participate in this webinar on an extremely important topic organized by CARIGEO, UN-GGIM Working Group on Geospatial Information for Disaster Risk Management, and UN-GGIM Americas Working Group on Geospatial Information and Services for Disasters. Unfortunately, in our region, if not in all countries, but in most of them, we face a variety of natural and environmental disasters every year. As a member of the Board of Directors of UN-GGIM Americas, we recognize this huge challenge and therefore encourage everyone to increasingly come together through partnerships, collaborations, and knowledge sharing to better address this issue. Furthermore, it is clear that geospatial technologies are essential and indispensable tools for preparing for, managing, responding to, and recovering from natural disasters, which are becoming more frequent and damaging. And naturally, this reinforces the relevance of all the work carried out by the Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management. As a Brazilian, I also recognize the need for events like these as a fundamental instrument for learning, capacity building, and awareness raising. Last year, Brazil faced one of the most serious natural disasters in its history, in which a state in the south of the country suffered from severe flooding that affected 2.4 million people and caused more than 180 deaths. Therefore, we hope to learn a lot from the presentations on this journey. Thus, I conclude these words by thanking the colleagues who will share their experiences with all of us, and may the lessons learned allow our region to be increasingly prepared for the inevitable events on the future. We look forward to a fruitful and meaningful discussion for our continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leonardo. I will now invite Simone to share with us briefly the agenda for today's activity. Thank you. Simone?
Yes, going again. Good morning, colleagues. So it's our pleasure to run through the agenda with you so that you're familiar with what to expect during the webinar. So Leonardo would have just assisted us with opening remarks on behalf of UN-GGIM Americas, which will be followed by greetings from the Working Group on Geospatial Information for Disaster Risk Management, and also UN-GGIM Americas Working Group on Geospatial Information and Services for Disasters. We welcome presentations from CEDIMA's Unmanned Aerial Systems for Comprehensive Disaster Management Program, also from Jamaica's National Emergency Operations Center, also Jamaica's National Emergency Response GIS team, also from St. Vincent and the Grenadines National Emergency Management Organization, followed by United Nations Resident Office, Coordinator's Office for the region, in addition to the International Charter on Space and Major Disasters, MAP Action, and the Caribbean Development Bank. I hand back over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I now introduce and call on Michelle Edwards from Jamaica, co-chair of UN-GGIM Working Group on Geospatial Information for Disaster Risk Management. Proceed, Michelle Edwards.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, colleagues and participants. Our moderator, is it Macathian?
Macathian.
Yes. Alexander, to Leonardo, and to Martha. Welcome, and the United Nations Committee of Experts on Geospatial Information for Disaster Risk Management is very pleased to be partnering with the Caribbean Geospatial Development Initiative, CARIGEO, with this very important webinar, Preparation, Response, and Recovery, Lessons Learned from Hurricane Beryl. We are actually just at the opening of the hurricane season, and we are already seeing some activity out in the ocean, Atlantic Ocean, So we know that it is very important. This is a very timely webinar, and very important for us to examine lessons that we have learned from Hurricane Beryl. Disasters affect people and properties, infrastructure, economies, and the environment. And given this relationship between disasters, development, globalization, we can see the risk landscape changing. And today we are faced with many diverse hazards, and having to respond to multiple hazards at one time. And so it is very important for us to learn from the experiences of all of our member states on exactly how we can, look at the benefits that we've learned from each other and the experiences of others in how we can manage these types of disasters. The working group for geospatial information and services, which was established in August. We have a new name, and so we are now Geospatial, a working group on geospatial information for disaster risk management, and we saw the need to look at the scope of the work of the working group, and looking at also the scope of disaster risk management, disaster management, and seeing that, yes, we need to be aligned, fit for purpose in terms of the mandate and work of the working group and for its effectiveness. And so the working group, as you would know, have developed the strategic framework on geospatial information and services for disasters. And this is intended to guide our member states and other stakeholders in making available and accessible, accurate, timely, and reliable geospatial information and services in a coordinated way to support decision makers and operational leads in disaster risk management prior to disaster, during, and of course, post-disaster. So we are very happy to be a part and to be partnering with the CARIGEO. And we know that the conditions across our various countries will determine how disasters affect us. And so it's important to understand, the various landscapes that we operate in and all the phases of disaster risk management and how we can strengthen this area with the geospatial technology, and how that can support our decision making. So this webinar hopes to reinforce the principles of disaster risk reduction and management, and of course to share the lessons of our various member states. So we would just like to thank and encourage the work that CARIGEO is doing. And we also want to thank your steering committee for, organizing this workshop. And we just congratulate you today. And we just congratulate you today on the work that we're doing. And we hope that this webinar will demonstrate the valuable lessons that we can learn in this critical area for disaster response, for the use of geospatial technology, and to all the presenters, looking forward to, the valuable lessons that you will share in your presentation. So with that, let me wish you all a very good and productive and engaging webinar today, where we will share and showcase the work done, our challenges from our various parts of the Americas, and of course, which will seek to help us to build on the opportunities on how we learn from each other. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a good morning.
Thank you very much, Michelle Edwards. Before we go on, I would like to invite all participants to edit their display names to include their country. And if you are representing a CARIGEO, a member state, please put it in all caps, the country name in all caps. We now move on to Martha Villa Gomez. I'm hoping I pronounced her name properly. So Martha, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. Hi, Markalfian. Is that okay, Markalfian, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it is.
So, hello, everyone. Well, it's a pleasure to see you all in this important webinar. Well, Michelle and Leonardo said a lot, but I would like to add something. And on behalf of UN-GGIM America's Working Group on Disaster, we extend a warm welcome to all participants. And we recognize the relevance and timeless of this session, especially given the significant impact of Hurricane Beryl across the Americas. So this event is a vital initiative aimed at raising awareness and strengthening to the capacity of member states in disaster preparedness and response. So this webinar provides a really important platform to reinforce disaster risk reduction. So principles to share key lessons from member states, well, as region and international organizations that contributed during the hurricane preparation, response, and recovery phases. So it also echoes the global understanding that disasters are not natural. They are the result of unmanagement risk, and we all know that. So we would like to sincerely congratulate Michelle, Cecile, and Simone, who are really organized and lead this initiative. Your efforts set a strong example for the region, highlighting the importance of coordination, resilience, and the critical role of geospatial information in disaster management. And I have to say that I'm so happy that you are woman leading these efforts. So again, I'm happy to be part of this event. So let's make the most of this space for dialogue, knowledge exchange, and thank you all for your participation and for your commitment to have a more resilient, a better informed Americas. And again, thanks. And back to you, Markafian. Thank you very much. Let's start.
Thank you very much, Martha. I think we have someone's hand up. Is that Michelle Forbes? Michelle Forbes, did you want to say something? Michelle? Okay. We are not hearing from Michelle immediately, so let's start off with session 1 of our presentations. And to do so, I would like to invite Valerie Grant, who is also, well, Dr. Valerie Grant, who is part of the CARIGEO Steering Committee and the president of the UN-GGIM America's Private Sector Network, to do her presentation. Proceed, Valerie. Valerie, we're not hearing you.
I am clearly having technology challenges this morning. I neither can unmute nor to use I'm not a very familiar WebEx user or can open my video for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm now unmuted, but my video apparently something is going on with that. So if the person managing this can unlock my video for me, that would be great.
There is no option to unlock your video.
On your end, I don't know what is going on here. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Don't know why it's not giving me the opportunity. It was earlier.
We can see your screen, but not yet.
Let's try this. Maybe it's because now it's doing it. Let me reshare.
Now we can see your camera.
Okay. Now we can see both. Great.
Yes,
We have
wonderful.
passed our technology issues. So good morning, everyone. So this morning I have the privilege of speaking about a project that CDIMA conducted, and I happen to be one of the consultants on that project at the time. And so I will be speaking about that project. It's the CDIMA UAS for CDM project. And just to give you a little bit of a background on the project, this project really used UAS or uncrewed aerial systems in disaster management to recognizing that many nations were using it. They wanted to be able to put some structure around it, because these devices, UAS, has been used for disaster events of all sorts across the region. However, the training was being conducted in silos. It was really a bit of a wild west. There is no certification. And so everything is not systemized. And so the purpose of that UAS program was really to facilitate a specialized field, which is being referred to as a CDIMA UAS for CDM program. And so it was aimed at developing that regional and international agreements to really support the standardization and the interoperability of not just the training, but to create also standard operating procedures. Now, the subregions that are indicated on screen here are all CDIMA member states, and I was working specifically in subregion 2 with the other consultants. So just to give you a context as to CDIMA, I recognize that CDIMA was not on the program, so I wanted to give you the context. So CDIMA, formerly known as CDERA before, and became CDIMA in 2009, really embraces the principle of comprehensive disaster management. So not just a focus on response and recovery, but recognizing that all phases of the disaster management cycle are very critical if we really need to be able to manage disasters effectively. The mandate of CDIMA then is really plenty: mobilizing and coordinating disaster relief, mitigating the consequences, encouraging disaster loss and reduction, and having cooperative agreements, and establishing and maintaining adequate emergency response capability, and improving that information sharing. So with that in mind, this project really fell right along those lines. And so the participating member states are displayed on screen, as we had indicated. And so the purpose of the program then was really to create accredited training program to be able to surge the capacity for the regional response mechanism when it is necessary in a disaster event, and in blue skies time to really support planning operations as well, and to create frameworks and international agreements that would serve as guidelines, as well as to create accreditation and certification program for the member states, and to really build camaraderie among the member states to share information and to reduce those silos, and to be able to more effectively use the mechanisms that CDIMA has to support states that may be in disaster events. So if it is that, let's say St. Lucia has a disaster event and Jamaica was not impacted, then maybe the UAS operators from Jamaica could in fact go to St. Lucia and operate seamlessly, because there would be some kind of a standardization, and the training would have been very similar. So the scope of the project, as mentioned, it has 3 consultants, Jamaica Flying Labs, who I represented at the time, was responsible for the certification and accreditation of the UAS for CDM program documentation, as well as creating those standard operating procedures. Then LLR Consultancy was responsible for frameworks and agreements documentation, and Class 1 Systems created the training and curriculum content. And so many of of you, if you're from disaster agencies, would have interfaced with one of us as we would have been across the region, really getting your inputs. So this isn't something that we pulled out of a hat, but we had regional consultations to try to come up with what this would look like. And so for those persons who are on the call who may be wondering why this, as we know that uncrewed aerial systems, this speaks to the full system, whereas the drones itself or the UAVs really, it speaks to the actual vehicles that the flying cameras, so to speak, that we have up there. And so we wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page. And the reason for that was because we recognize that while satellite imagery and all of the other things like traditional aircraft has a space in disaster management, UAVs also have a space because they're what fits in that 100 to 700 meter. And they're able to be, especially when we have cloud cover in the region after an event, they are most effective. It's an emerging technology. It's low cost, or we could use some low cost equipment, not all is. And it complements the traditional surveying technologies. And it also enables rapid deployment, especially as we deal with response efforts. So then you are able to collect your own data in your own time frame. These days, the battery and optical capabilities are evolving, and so you have higher resolution, and the turnaround can be in just a few hours instead of waiting weeks for your data. So you can do that data acquisition on demand, and you control the process. So it's empowering you to control that process. So they're really becoming an effective tool in this whole matter of disaster management. And you may be aware that there are different flavors of drones. You're seeing some that are classified by the size on the screen, but there are also others classified by their functionality, right? So there are many out there. We want to be able to try to standardize it. And speaking of standards, one of the things that was developed is the whole matter of standard operating procedures to really guide the operations across comprehensive disaster management. And these SOPs are systematically aligned to each phase of the disaster management cycle to support the broader goal of resilient and unified disaster management strategy across the Caribbean. And some of the key objectives coming out of those standard operating procedures is the whole matter of safe and efficient UAS deployment, because safety is critical. The regulatory compliance, so working with both the national civil aviation authorities and the regional entities that are civil aviation authorities, and cross-border coordination and collaboration was one of the key elements. As of course, there is also the whole matter of the ethical operations of these drones, so privacy protection and maintaining humanitarian principles, so safety, dignity, and the rights of the persons not being too invasive. So all of this is spoken to in the standards. And so you may be wondering, since those consultations and since we have had the different deliverables, what has happened? Another deliverable was the whole matter of the curriculum that was developed and the training materials that are there. Those are with CDIMA at the moment. Other templates for the framework agreements are also with CDIMA. The certification and accreditation templates and guidelines are there. And as consultants, we also made several recommendations to CDIMA. What has happened since? Well, I was reliably informed that the program has received approval at the CDIMA Technical Advisor Committee meeting in April. And so the program coordinator will be hired soon, hopefully sometime in the next few months. And then partner institutions, as per the recommendations for that coordinator role, we will have the rollout of the full program. So what you can do is to listen out for when CDIMA will be doing that, but know that there has been the recognition that this is an area that requires standardization. The work has been done, the background work has been done, you have participated in that background work. And so now is the time to systematically roll out the program as soon as they get the staff on hand to start doing so with the regional partners. In terms of some early wins from the program, Jamaica, the Bureau of Standards in Jamaica, as a result of this program, has established a UAS technical committee to start standardization operations in Jamaica. That committee is actively meeting and looking at what are the applicable standards for Jamaica. They are going to also be liaising with not just limiting into Jamaica, but there's also thoughts to look at cross-Q so that we look at the regional applicability of these standards, and other countries in the region has already started their standardization efforts as well. And Jamaica Flying Labs and several partners are also hosting a conference on drones, AI, and GIS in Jamaica in December. So we are hoping that you will all be present at that conference. And so that is, again, something else that is coming out of that. So we have several partners who is going to be there. It's bringing together the leaders across industry. And so for more information, just stay tuned. Click the, scan the QR code, put your information on the list so that you can get updates as to this conference as well, and know that registration will be opening come July 1st, so you can sign up and receive all of the updates accordingly. So I just had a few minutes to give you a big picture, and so I hope that that sensitizes you to what has been happening in terms of the UAS for CDM program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Valerie. Before we continue, I would like to, on behalf of CDMA and Ms. Elizabeth Riley, the head of CDMA, extend their apologies for them being unable to attend our webinar this morning, and also the best wishes for the success of our webinar this morning. We will now continue with a presentation on the activation and response by a National Emergency Operations Center. This will be done by Michelle Edwards, Deputy Director General of the Jamaica's Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Operations. Michelle Edwards, are you ready?
Okay, I need to share my screen.
Yes. Whilst Michelle is sharing her screen, anyone who has any questions, we have our dear member Paul Riley, who will be monitoring the chat for questions. So you may put in your questions in the chat, and during the question and answer session, Paul Riley will raise them for us. Okay. Proceed when you're ready, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. So good morning again to all of you. And of course, it gives me great pleasure to just share some experiences on Hurricane Beryl, some of the lessons that we've learned, and just to guide us through the National Emergency Operations Center here in Jamaica and how it functions. I am going to look at the general response framework, and we're going to look at the NEOC, its purpose. Then we look at our role in the sub-region, our sub-regional focal point. And then we look at some experiences from Hurricane Beryl. So the background on Jamaica's National Emergency Operations Center is rooted in the legislation, which is the Disaster Risk Management Act of 2015, and Section 17(2)(e)(1) calls for the manning of an National Emergency Operations Center. Now, the entire framework architecture of the response, it really looks at the legal framework, the National Disaster Risk Management Council, which of course is chaired by our Honorable Prime Minister, and Our deputy chairman of the council is the Honorable Minister that is responsible for disaster management in Jamaica, and that is the Honorable Desmond McKenzie, who is the Minister of Local Government and Community Development. So the response framework, we have the cabinet, we have the National Emergency Operations.
Excuse me, Michelle.
Yes.
Can you put your slides in presentation mode, please? We're not seeing the full slide. We're seeing.
Okay, hold on. It is in presentation mode for me on my end. It's still.
Yeah.
And do you have a second screen plugged in? Because we only can see the PowerPoint area.
Okay, all right. Let's stop sharing and let's do it again. Let's put it in the before and then. But I can't share.
How many
Let's go
monitors
back
do you
to.
have?
Let's do it again because when we did
Okay.
the test earlier, it worked. Okay, let's go again, share. Okay, let's do the entire screen. No, that's no, it's this one. Let's put it in, let's try and put it in the PowerPoint mode.
Okay. All right. So, since we're having difficulty with that, can you share your entire screen and just continue
Okay,
with it
how is
as it
this?
was? Yeah,
Is this any better?
we'll work with this.
Oh dear.
Which slide did you intend to be on? We're now seeing the emergency response framework slide.
Right, that's the slide I'm on.
All right, good. Let's proceed.
Okay, my apologies about this. When we tested it earlier, it worked. I'm not sure what's happening. Anyway, as I was indicating with the response framework, we have, of course, the cabinet, and we spoke a bit about that. We have the National Emergency Response Mechanism, which comprises the cabinet, the NEOC, the various other emergency operations centers, whether they be at agency level or some critical sectors. We have the parish response mechanism as well. And then we have all of our plans, SOPs, and other guiding documents, MOUs that really form the entire national emergency response mechanism. So we have national plans, we have ministry, department, and agency plans. We have specialized plans, we have development partners and donor groups. And here is where we had some support, and you'll hear more about that in the Hurricane Beryl section. MOUs, SOPs, and mutual aid agreements, the sub-region coordination group, the private sector support, civil society, NGOs, and volunteers. And of course, we have the National Emergency Operations Center and the parish response mechanism. And at the parish level, it pretty much mirrors what happens at the national level as well. So the National Emergency Operations Center, its purpose really is to relieve chaos by making informed decisions. And informed decisions really is reliant on the information, the data that we have, and the what is happening within the various time spans of the response. It prevents an emergency from becoming a disaster, and coordinates emergency response using a multi-agency approach. and of course, save energy, money, and other resources through coordination. Is that oh no, okay. Is it in presentation mode now?
No,
it's
it's
not.
Still
not.
not?
No,
But
it's
if you
still
just
not.
click on the next slide, then I guess we will be able to see it.
Okay, all right. Right, so,
No, we're still not seeing we're still on
Yeah.
the same framework slide.
okay.
Move your cursor a little to your right, to your left, sorry.
Okay,
Left.
screen. Okay, so is this better? Is it moving?
No.
No, it is not moving. Probably you are just sharing the PowerPoint slices.
Oh boy.
You can just share your
Okay,
screen.
it has moved a bit.
That's it.
All right. Okay, so I think that we will just continue like this. All right, so the National Emergency Operations Center is really the central hub for the response coordination once the NEOC is activated. And it receives its direction, of course, from the Prime Minister, from the Cabinet, and the various ministers that, of course, for the major critical entities that are members or, they have a seat in the National Emergency Operations Center. And then it gives the general direction to public officers to for guidance or the public where necessary. It is the sole source for the official information about the state of the response coordination and what is happening in the country. That is the authoritative source. And we make recommendations now to the Disaster Risk Management Council on response coordination matters that, of course, will require some kind of policy directive or, coming out of the response. And of course, once the response is completed or is in progress, and we now need to look at support through relief operations, international aid that is coordinated through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, through the NEOC. So basically, in short, the NEOC ensures that all aspects of the response is coordinated efficiently and effectively. And of course, the purpose ultimately is to save lives, reduce property damage, and to facilitate faster recovery. Now, the National Emergency Operations Center has some functional components, which is, of course, the pillars on which it is built. We have an executive, and the executive would be the Executive Command Center, which deals with all of the policy matters of the NEOC coordination. We have the operations section, which deals with the actual operations now of the NEOC, whether it is the operations grouping in the NEOC and the operations of the NEOC. And then there is the communication center, which deals with media and crisis communication. And of course, and public information. And then there is the admin. There's the admin support, which deals with all admin, whether it be for the EOC staff, their comfort and their well-being, and of course logistics, which would deal with relief and response coordination, relief and distribution, when we have a disaster event. Now, the The NEOC, no, these functions of the NEOC, we have here activation and deactivation of the NEOC. So that is usually done by a trigger from, if it is a hurricane, it would be the National Meteorological Service of Jamaica, who would then have its discussion and its conference with the National Disaster Office. And coming out of, those deliberations, the country is put on alert and the NEOC is activated. And we have some levels of activation. I think it's in the following slide, but I'll have to go through all of these first. Let's see. Right, so for the activation, well, this is our threat levels. We have normal, which is green, where there's no potential threat detected, and agencies will just monitor, whatever incidents that are taking place in their normal plans and SOPs. So, for example, if there's a normal road accident or anything like that, the agencies will normally do their normal monitoring. And then at the level 1 activation, the level 1 threat level, which is yellow, that is a potential threat is detected. And at this point, the response would be that the ODPEM is alerted by the monitoring agency, whether it is the emergency responders, whether it is the municipal corporations, and ministries, departments, or agencies. And we monitor the situation that is unfolding. And the NEOC is not yet activated. No, at a level 2 threat level.
Michelle?
Yes.
You have about 3 minutes left.
I have 3 minutes left? Oh,
yes.
No. Okay. Well, let's not go through all of that. I just want to say there is a timeline, key coordination nodes of the NEOC where there are certain things that happen in a time frame, and it is here for hurricane from 72 hours up to a week where the NEOC is deactivated. Then there are some tools that we use in the NEOC, which a quick reference guide, which tells us, it pulls out all of the SOPs and so on, the various status boards that are managed in the NEOC for its information management. Then when the NEOC is activated, we use scenario planning to support the decision making. And, coming out of the scenario, whether it is a hurricane or any other hazard, we look at the historical inventory of impacts, damage assessment reports, and other situation reports. And that will help us in the planning, not only the NEOC, but all of the agencies, ministries, and departments. And then we also conduct damage assessment. And in the damage assessment is where we actually map the impacts. We map the areas that have been impacted. And one feature of the NEOC is our National Emergency Response GIS team, which uses the initial damage assessment methodology to spatially represent damage. And that has been a real success story for us. This is a map that was done some time ago of mapping of some incidents. We had some flood events, and this is the extent of the flood event and the actual communities that were mapped. Just quickly, the sub-regional focal point, we provide support to the sub-region, and the northwestern sub-region, the sub-region, right, of the Northwestern Caribbean is Jamaica's sub-regional focal point. And then we have Bahamas, Belize, Turks and Caicos, Haiti, and Cayman Islands as a part of the sub-region. And some of the notable coordination efforts that have been mounted, would be response to Haiti, in the 2010 earthquake. Belize, there's some technical assistance that was provided. We do even capacity building. And this year we had an exercise, Exercise Horizon, which tested the capabilities of the national disaster offices and the military together of the sub-region. And that is something that we probably will be doing, every other year as it comes. And then for Hurricane Beryl, I will just pretty much close off with this. We would have activated the NEOC, and we would have gotten some support from the United Nations humanitarian country team that would have come into country to help with to support the response, and all of that was coordinated through the NEOC, where we had the map action grouping and other humanitarian groups that would have gone out and supported assessments, and of course that would have led to things like the needs that would have come out in for Hurricane Beryl, where for example, housing material came out as a priority need, food secondary, and of course that assessment now would have helped us to generate the needs list, which then is now communicated through the international community, through foreign affairs, and we receive assistance. And coming out of Hurricane Beryl, we would have prepared a report that now helps to support the post-disaster needs analysis, PDNA. I think that's it, right? PDNA, right? That is prepared by the Planning Institute of Jamaica, which now looks at the economic losses and losses in comparison to GDP, etc., from the event. So that's just a quick synopsis of the NEOC, how it functions, what we did in Hurricane Beryl in a very short time frame. But I hope that it was useful information, and of course, we are welcome to share information and on our successes and our challenges as we look to support each other and help each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle Edwards. We now move quickly on to our next presentation from Jamaica's National Emergency Response GIS team. So I invite the coordinator of the team, Simone Lloyd, and also the Caribbean Vocal and chair of CARIGEO to present.
Martha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but for some reason it's a bit gabbled.
Okay, I'm hoping it gets better. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today. It is my pleasure to share with you the work of Jamaica's National Emergency Response GIS team mechanism, and in particular with respect to our deployment for Hurricane Beryl. So Michelle would have done a very good job of introducing the team, given the fact that she would have spoken to the operations of Jamaica's National Emergency Operations Center. So it's behind that context and background why it is that NERGIS would have been established back in 2004. Valerie would have been very integral in the beginnings with respect to, and Cecile with respect to the early beginnings and the vision and the whole conceptualization and action in respect to NERGIS being developed. So back in 2004, Hurricane Ivan would have caused significant devastation to Jamaica, and it's given that level of devastation why it was found that there was a need to provide geospatial support to Jamaica's ODPM through the NEOC. And with that then came the whole idea of why not harness the skills, the knowledge, resources that already exist within government and otherwise with respect to persons who have the geospatial knowledge and skills to then provide support in the event of an event, which is in the event of a disaster. And so Hurricane Ivan would have been the trigger mechanism with respect to NERGIS being developed. So the then chair of the Land Information Council of Jamaica would have conceptualized and would have, with that, started with respect to it becoming a reality. And so with that, ODPM, through cabinet decision, would have gotten approval for the team to be established sometime afterwards, but the team has actually been in existence for over 20 years. The membership has changed and evolved over time, but the work that we do has expanded significantly. And as Michelle would have spoken to, we have been doing significant work with respect to providing support to the operations of the NEOC. So the group is really a mixture of personnel, GIS personnel who are trained, persons who have requisite knowledge, background, and skills, who provide support, who lend support through volunteerism in the event of a disaster that triggers the need for this level of geospatial support. And so with that, we've had different batches of team members over time who've been trained and who have been providing support within the context and the structure of the NEOC. So Michelle would have spoken to the fact that the National Disaster Committee, led by the Honorable Prime Minister, is who heads this entire operation. And with that, operating through the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, within that context now, we have the National Spatial Data Management Branch, which spearheads and coordinates the activities of the team with the support of members from various member organizations of government primarily. In addition to, we will have support from private sector persons and other volunteers who may also support the team. So it's a team of geospatial specialists. So the member organizations vary across government. We pride in terms of overtime training persons in global navigation satellite systems, data collection, spatial analysis, also initial damage assessments. And initial damage assessment training is key because every time we are required to be deployed, we need to, or we're tasked with executing initial damage assessments. So persons are trained. Apart from that, persons will have the requisite skills given their experience in terms of educational experience or through their organizations, but we also have encouraged trainings over time in other areas that would bolster persons' skills and capabilities. So we have approved persons who are committed to the task, who are volunteers, many of whom are online with us now. And so with that, they go through series of trainings, they volunteer, they then provide support as needed whenever it's a case whereby the ODPM requires this need in terms of support. So with respect to being geared up for deployment, we've been geared up for deployment for different types of events to support the National Emergency Operations Center. So with this, whenever there is an event, we are asked, so the ODPM reaches out to us, to the National Spatial Management Branch, and asks that we activate the team. Upon activation of the team, it requires reaching out to the member organizations to then get release of the membership with respect to being able to facilitate them being deployed to the NEOC and also given field operations. With that, of course, pre-deployment activities will include briefing exercises before deployment and sensitization, which is key to ensure that we are clear on what the situation is, and with that, being able to plan accordingly with respect to how many team members are needed, how many teams are needed for dispatch, and with that facilitating the deployments that need to happen in the field. So whether we're doing initial, of course, in all cases, we're doing initial damage assessments. These are done within 24 hours to 48 hours of an event. And with that, whether we're using GNSS or GPS data collection devices, whether we're using data collection apps on our mobile devices in terms of tablets or phones, whether we are using unmanned area systems, and Val would have done a very good job of speaking to the use of uncrewed or unmanned area systems to assist with the whole response effort where disasters are concerned. So with that, we use different geospatial resources prior to, during, and post an event, but more so our activities are focused on post an event, whenever there is a need for us to be activated. With that, we've responded to different types of events: hurricanes, storms, depressions, landslides, floods, droughts, bushfires, disease events also, including chikungunya and also COVID-19. And COVID-19 would have been our longest deployment when Jamaica was declared a national disaster area, and the emergency would have been deployed over an extended period of months. So various deployments, Michelle would have spoken to, Jamaica serving as a sub-regional focal point and lead for this region of the Caribbean. And so with that, we not only provide support within Jamaica, but the team has also been deployed in terms of members who have also provided support in the other areas of the Caribbean who are within the sub-region. So deployments to Turks and Caicos Islands have happened. Also deployments to the Bahamas in terms of multiple deployments have been facilitated over time. Now, with respect to Hurricane Beryl, our deployment for Hurricane Beryl would have spanned July for a few weeks. It would have been 2 to 3 weeks deployment. And with that, the deployment would have included a whole arming with respect to persons being deployed to the NEOC with respect to manning there, and facilitating the development of maps, because what is needed is being able to produce situation reports on a daily basis. And for these situation reports, them being, I'm going to reshare again because I realize the slides are not transitioning as they should. Okay, good. All right. Yes. So with respect to the deployment, we would have been deployed for the first few weeks of July. And with that, the deployment would have included manning the National Emergency Operations Center, but also teams being deployed to various parishes that were impacted to conduct initial damage assessments. So with that, we would have had quite a bit of support from different government agencies and geospatial experts, different from drone experts or unmanned area system experts who would have gone in the field and facilitated the mapping of various areas, the capturing of images, the capturing of videos with respect to the extent of the impact of the event. We'd have also gotten a lot of support from other disaster-related entities, such as the St. Patrick's Rangers, which is a group of youngsters who deal with disaster response. Importantly, for the Beryl response, we would have also gotten support. Okay, I'm not sure why the slides are not transitioning. We would have also gotten a lot of support with respect to collaboration with other entities during the support, and we would have also assisted with international agents who would have come into Ireland and who would have needed to provide support to the NEOC. So deployments would have included supporting the UNDAC, UNICEF, OIM, UNDSS, UNDP, Atlas, GEO, WASH, TSF, WFB, UN OCHA. So there were multiple entities, whether they were humanitarian entities or international entities who were providing support locally. We would have provided support with respect to assisting them with their assessments in field, chauffeuring them around to the various parishes, because we would have previously gone to those areas, and so the team would have been familiar with the areas that were affected, and so they would have assisted with chauffeuring and assisting with the data collection support after we collected the initial damage assessment data. So in doing the deployment, what would have been key, as I said, situation reports. With these situation reports, the generation of maps that would show what the situation is based on reports coming into the NEOC. And so with that, the generating of various maps showing the extent of the impact, power outages, downed lines, flooded areas, areas impacted by storm surges, fallen trees, debris and landslides, and the listing would go on. For the initial damage assessment component, we would have used a ArcGIS Survey 123 tool, and this tool would have been used to capture what was the extent in terms of buildings that would have been impacted, the type of building, the level of damage that was experienced, the extent of flooding, and capturing of images of these various impacts. So the tool would have been used extensively throughout, and the monitoring of that in terms of the impact for each of the parishes. And as the team went out, we would have been supported significantly by the Jamaica Fire Brigade's UAV team and also the Jamaica Defense Forces drone and UAV team. So it was a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnership that would have happened to provide support to Beryl in particular, given the fact that it was so extensive, given the level of damage that was experienced across the island. So these are different maps showing the extent, showing what would have been done in terms of map creation, drone images that would have been captured during the event, but post the event to support or aiding the NEOC with respect to them being able to do what they need to do in terms of national coordination. Okay. And thank you. And I'll hand back over to you, Mark-Cathian, as I play this video and wind down.
Thank you very much, Simone. We now move steadily to Michelle Forbes, the Director of National Emergency Management Organization of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Michelle, are you ready? Michelle? Okay, whilst we await Michelle, I would like to remind our participants to add their organization and country to their name. So edit your names and add your organization and country. And if you are representative of a member state, kindly put your country name in all caps. Michelle Forbes?
She was sending me a message saying that she switched to another device. Probably she's already refreshing.
Okay.
Well, she have the privilege to as a panelist as well. So
Yes.
Can you see me?
Yes, Michelle, we can see you. And we can hear you.
Okay, so let me know if you're seeing my presentation also, please.
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Okay, good. Thanks for having me this morning. Just a bit of technology challenge. So I'm going to just give you a quick, not too long, I know time is limited, on our experience during Hurricane Beryl, leading up to Hurricane Beryl, maybe more talking around what happened, because I can't, if I would like to present all the slides, but it will just be too much. So quickly on the background of our organization, similar to most islands in the region, some key recommendations, and I will talk you through some of the things we have been doing for this year. Now, many of you know that we are a small island state. For those of you who are not too familiar, just 110,000 population, quite small, and we have multiple islands, mainland St. Vincent, which is the largest island and volcanic island, and we have 32 islands and cays. We have 5 islands mainly inhabited south of St. Vincent. So we stretch from mainland St. Vincent just to north of Grenada in the south. Our background, we were established in 2002, still quite a young organization, and previously it had a department called local government that was responsible for disaster management during the hurricane season only with one person. When we started out in 2022, we had started with about 4 persons, and now we boast a staff of 22 thereabout, and we continue to increase our institutional capacity and while working with key agencies in country and around the region and the world. Our authority lies with an act that was established in 2006. A bit dated now because we have long embraced the comprehensive disaster management and our act needs to be aligned to that. We also have the National Disaster Relief Act of 1947 and Emergency Powers Act of 1970. That gives us the general legal direction. At the national level, particularly in the national context, we have the National Emergency Council, which is chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister. Normally, any decisions goes through the council and up to the cabinet. An Emergency Executive Committee, subcommittees, 10 subcommittees of NEMO. We have the Emergency Operations Center, which is the heart and hub of the operations once we're going into an emergency phase, and the District Disaster Committees. You note we have NEMO at the site there. That's NEMO, the Secretariat, which I head, to coordinate all disaster risk reduction activities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And these are just, again, the 4 pillars of our operations. We have 10 subcommittees. Various countries may have different, but these are our 10 committees, from damage assessment to shelter management to recovery. So these are the 10 committees that we have at the national level that governs our operations, mainly in emergencies. And we need to look at the changing context of how we have to be a bit more proactive in terms of these committees cannot only function around emergencies. Again, just setting the context, we have the National Disaster Management Framework for all hazards, not just the hurricane season, not just hurricanes. And we like similar to many countries, we would have gone through the pandemic in 2020-21. We had multiple hazards during this time. I think St. Vincent is ripe in terms of the hazards that we have gone through over the years. We had the pandemic, we had dengue, we had a volcanic eruption in 2021, we had Hurricane Elsa after the volcanic eruption, and then we had major Hurricane Beryl in 2024. That really tested our entire national system, and I dare say continue to test our regional response mechanism and system. We have established for disaster management, which I probably touch on later, the whole issue of contingency funds in 2017 that has really propelled our support in terms of how we respond and coordinate the financial agreements, arrangements after emergencies using our disaster risk financing strategies. Not sure if I'll get a time to talk more about that. For concept of operations, our Jefe is the Prime Minister for Disaster Management, so he is the chair of the National Emergency Operations Center overall and the National Emergency Management System. Once operate, the director who takes overall management of the operations and reports up directly to the Prime Minister, and we have the deputy functioning in the NEOC level. We have long embraced comprehensive disaster management. I told you about the multiplicity of hazards that we have faced here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we need to look further in terms of not just the hurricane season, but looking at how we have been able to incorporate all the hazards in our programs. I'll go quickly into Hurricane Beryl, and even before, I think I may probably missed the slide there, but even before Hurricane Beryl, we would have had our preparations for Hurricane Beryl, where we would have done a lot of media releases and speaking to the media on the approach of Hurricane Beryl, because it was a rapidly intensifying storm. And I remember I was actually out of state a few days trying to get home. From the time I saw it, I said, look, I had to get back into St. Vincent, and it was challenging because it was Cricket World Cup, and they had me overnighting in Barbados Friday night, and then coming into St. Vincent the Saturday evening. I said no, so I bought my own ticket, and I made it way into St. Vincent, flying all the islands actually before, and then seeing the devastation afterwards. It was something else. So prior to Hurricane Beryl, we would have started some work in the Southern Grenadines in looking at preparing the Southern Grenadines, because we saw a bit of the storms coming over the last few years. I think in 2023 in particular, it was the first time we had to have warnings out for the Southern Grenadines only and not mainland. And we had to look at the legal teeth around that, because how do you put the Southern Grenadines Island only on a hurricane or storm watch and not the northern part of northern islands? So we saw that these systems continue to be going a bit south. And I said to my team, we need to focus on the Southern Grenadines. And we actually started some activities for that entire, our plan was for the entire summer, but we only got in 1 week in Union Island, and then Beryl happened. And the impact, we have seen the pictures from the region. We have seen CARIGEO, we have seen St. Vincent, Union Island, Canawan, Mayo, and the resort islands of Piti, St. Vincent, and Palm Island. We don't hear people speak about them a lot, but they were devastated. We'll have over 3,000 households that were displaced. And of course, thinking of the social protection programs that need to be implemented following that, we still have 197 persons in 11 shelters. Yes, we still do have persons in shelters. The government is continuing to pay rent for over 900 persons in guest or rental accommodation, and the social protection programs are ongoing using national funds from loans through the World Bank and other entities. We would have completed our post-disaster needs assessment, and that our total damage and loss is $874 million, which was roughly up to 29% of our GDP. And that is huge for a large country. If you look at our debt, those who are more inclined in economics, if you look at our debt is continuing to increase because of disasters that have been impacting St. Vincent and the Grenadines over the years. Just a thought on Hurricane Beryl, though, it was my first time seeing a Category 4 bearing down on us. And when we look at our national preparations, we also have to look at our individual preparedness, because I remember leaving home that morning just after 10 and covering up everything with tarpaulins. And it was the first time I had a tear in my eye, because I didn't know what I was returning home to. Because you don't know whether the Beryl was going to shift a little north, a little south, or what. And just knowing that when you leave home, you don't know when you're returning home and what you are coming home to, if anything at all. So, and the Monday morning, sitting down here, right where I'm sitting, and chatting with the head of the Met Services, and that's what are you saying of the direction of Beryl. And when I got a call from CDMA, I said, Michelle, what's going on in the Grenadines? We just got a call that CARIGEO is devastated. And I turned to the head of the Met Service. I said, if CARIGEO is devastated, all of our Southern Grenadine islands are gone. And to see that basically is like looking at a deer in a headlight. So we have to realize the multi-island impact we have. Now, I'm going to go into a bit of some of the challenges that we would have encountered. As many countries, we operate the Emergency Operations Center during emergencies. And even though we would have done some preparations ahead of the hurricane season, because we have agencies such as the World Food Program, who we partnered with in terms of ensuring that we had a platform, we do not have an information management system. And that's one of our challenge, in that having something that we could have collected data and share across all departments, so that we know once it is captured, we can actually share it, and everybody should be able to tap in to see who have been impacted and those that we are missing. But we still had some inconsistent sharing of data across the board. And, some people want to control the data. They will make up some stories on you to tell the ministers, that you're not doing this right or not right. So we have the constraints, and we need to really address that, especially if we're looking at a central coordination going forward. We did well before, and I think it's sometimes in emergencies this happens. We tend to do well before the impact. We give information to the public and so on, but then we get bogged down in responding and coordinating that. We forget sometimes the updates to the public as we would like. So some of the key lessons learned, we need to have effective NEC activation and decisive leadership. And I am saying this to my colleagues too. Not everybody who's qualified can actually function in an emergency. Qualification on paper is one thing, but being able to take that leadership during the emergency and during the EOC, and so is key. And the early activation of the NEOC in our case was key And we always had strong leadership at the national level to really facilitate and go through the process of declaring the emergency, etc. We have always had a strong interagency collaboration, especially with the Met services, and working in the communities in terms of initial damage assessment and the regional international partnerships that we have had existing through the regional response mechanism, other entities on the ground, and the United Nations system, along with our bilaterals of our neighbors, because sometimes our first responders are often our neighbors, especially in the regional response mechanism, where we would have the Barbados through the RSS regional security system supporting our country. So these are key in terms of having these 4 areas: the effective leadership, the strong interagency, swift initial damage assessment, but we had some challenges there that I can speak about, and the robust partnerships. My key lessons is, and I said St. Vincent is a multi-island state. How do you coordinate across country? How do you spread your only 20 staff? And people think it's a lot. How do you spread your staff across 5 islands? Bequia got impacted. Bequia got category 2 winds. We had Mustique is private, so they would not normally ask for support unless it's really that bad. Canawan, Union Island, Myro. How do you spread your staff? How do you spread the agencies across all the islands? Michelle Forbes can't be in all the islands at the same time. So the whole multi-island coordination and strengthening of the local emergency management structures are key, because we depend on volunteers, and volunteers, you cannot have your volunteers really being the one having the accountability and transparency that is needed across, especially when relief supplies start to flow throughout the island. So these are some of the considerations now that we have taken into effect into 2025 preparation for the hurricane season, ensuring that we have more local persons on the ground and local entities that we coordinate with. How do you do? We never thought of mass evacuation planning for the Grenadines, and in the context now, we definitely have to think of it for 2025, because we only have, for example, 1 shelter now in Myro. In Union Island, the shelters are still being repaired and not quite ready yet for the hurricane season. So how do you plan in terms of evacuating the population, even though half still on mainland St. Vincent, but we need to do that. And of course, the capacity building across all the islands and decentralization of the natural emergency management system. One of the things that happened, even though we're speaking about Beryl, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a multi-island state, we have the volcanic eruption, and there were implications for data monitoring for other hazards. So even while we were dealing with Beryl, we had a volcano that we have to keep a close eye on, because it does give us some palpitations every now and then that we need to really keep on it. So we had Beryl disrupting the fiber optic system, disrupting our monitoring of the volcano, and we were there going crazy. How do we get the fiber optic? The power company, the providers who give service to the fiber optic, they're busy trying to restore the Grenadines, and you can't get anything repaired. We had to bring in microwave systems so that we can able to. So in monitoring one hazard, it also has implications for the other hazards, and how do you really keep a tab on what is happening, because it's not just the hurricanes only. We looked at the resilient infrastructure that is needed for all hazards.
Michelle?
Yes, sir.
Can you wrap up in 5 minutes, please?
Yes, please. I will, yes.
Thank you.
I'm hearing. So some of the recommendation to an infrastructure resilience as we build for category 5 storms, in that most of our infrastructure are not built up to hurricane standards. So if they fail, your communication systems will fail. And as in the case of Union Island, we would have had a tower for emergency communication network, and the provider's structure was not strong enough, and the entire thing failed and broke into. So we have to look at our robust infrastructure across all of it. Recommendations, we were able to get support from Map Action. You see that photo below of Union Island. Is Union Island? Yes, post-event. And we're able to get support from Map Action and the International Space Charter, which we are now a member of. And we have to look at how to incorporate the ICT tools a bit more, especially in damage assessment, because when an island is devastated and you don't have the baseline data, what are you going to observe in terms of what was damaged? It's gone. There's nothing there for you to check on. So if you do not have that baseline and that satellite imagery, that we have to look at. We have to also prepare for the long haul, especially in terms of our regional response. Response is not just a day or two. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines case, we needed support until September, and we needed beyond September, but of course there's a financial implication. So use of the tools and use of the regional response mechanism need to be prepared for the long haul. I think I repeated that. Right, so going forward, we need to ensure that we have contingency planning for financing. And in our case, we were able to use our contingency fund. We were able to use a regional mechanism. We were able to activate our disaster risk financing mechanism to support St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And as we prepare for the 2025 hurricane season, we don't know what it's going to be. We had our first set of heavy rains yesterday, and already showing that, you know, agencies need to keep on the ball in terms of clearing the roads and so on, so that we would reduce the flooding. But we just have to prepare for all season and not just the hurricane season. So this is a snapshot from St. Vincent and the Grenadines of Hurricane Beryl and how do we do our preparedness here in St. Vincent. And that's our after action review that we had in February for Hurricane Beryl. So I'll await any questions as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michelle Forbes. Fabian, could we add Kimisha Swabi? She is actually our next presenter.
She's already a panelist.
She's already a panelist?
Yeah,
okay, wonderful. So everyone, this wraps up our first session, organizing as a region for disasters. I want to thank all the presenters. And we move into our second session, which is the role of disaster risk reduction, geospatial and financing organizations within the Caribbean. And we will be starting off. Okay, and we will be starting off with Kimisha Swabi, Emergency Response Preparedness and Partnerships Officer, United Nations Resident Coordinator's Office. Kimisha, are you ready? Kimisha?
Mark,
Kimisha?
she's saying she's unable to mute.
She's unable to unmute. Fabian.
To unmute herself.
Yeah, I'm on it. She have the right for the panelists, so she was able to. Yeah.
I'm not seeing her in the. Okay, I'm seeing her in the list of panelists now. Okay, I'm seeing
her.
her.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you, Kimisha.
Okay,
welcome.
1 moment. I'm going to also see if you can see me. Let's try this again. All right, we've tried. 1 moment. I am also trying to get the video up. Okay.
Okay, I'm not hearing from Kimisha. Kimisha, is all well on your end? Okay, it looks like Kimisha has dropped off the webinar completely. I'm not seeing her in the panelists. Oh, all right, she is back. Okay.
She have the permissions for panelist.
Yes, I see her as a panelist now. Yes, Commissioner, you may proceed.
Hello, morning.
Hi, good morning.
Okay,
Yeah.
hello everyone. Are you able to see me and hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present. And I'm representing the UN Resident Coordinator's Office. And I'll be discussing here briefly the United Nations Coordination and Response for Hurricane Beryl in the Caribbean, focusing on our mechanisms, the services provided, and recommendations for future hurricane seasons. Now, I came in when the earlier presenter was speaking, and I think across the Caribbean there's an acceptance that Hurricane Beryl was a watershed moment for disaster response in our region, and the lessons learned are invaluable as we prepare for the upcoming 2025 hurricane season. Let me just begin with a little bit of background on the UN system. So the UN Resident Coordinator's Office serves as the central coordination hub for the UN system's response to any initiative in a country. So we are led by our resident coordinator, Dennis Zulu, and he is the RCO, and he ensures coherent UN support aligned with national priorities. In Jamaica, we have several key UN agencies working in complementary areas. So, and I think seeing the attendee list and having listened, I know that many of you here are familiar with the UN system. Perhaps you have worked with one key agency, but within countries, you have some UN offices like in Jamaica, where our RCO is actually an MCO, meaning a multi-country office, where we oversee operations across 5 territories, and you have similar setups across the Caribbean for other countries and territories. So we have several key UN agencies that are resident in Jamaica that work in complementary areas. So UNICEF focuses on child protection, education, water, sanitation and hygiene, and nutrition. And these are in the emergency response contexts. UNDP handles a lot of activities. Sometimes they do work on infrastructure rehabilitation and early recovery. And the World Food Program, WFP, addresses food security. And in the Jamaican context, last year, they provided support through cash-based assistance, while we have UN Women, UNFPA, who might focus on other gender-specific support and gender-based violence prevention. The UN Emergency Technical Team, or UNET, provides strategic direction during emergencies, and this structure, led by heads of agencies, enables rapid and informed decision-making, which proved critical during the Hurricane Beryl response. So let's talk about the activation mechanisms for the UN organizations. When a disaster strikes, several activation mechanisms come into play. One of them that came into play last year was for us in this region was the Central Emergency Response Fund, or CERF, which enables rapid financial mobilization. For Hurricane Beryl specifically, CERF allocated $2.5 million to address urgent humanitarian needs across multiple sectors. The UN Disaster Assessment and Coordination Team, that's UNDAC, deployed by OCHA, Panama, set up operations centers and developed assessment methodologies on the ground. So the unit is activated by the resident coordinator within country when a disaster strikes or is imminent, ensuring coordinated action across agencies. Key triggers for these activations include the scale of humanitarian need, government declarations of an emergency, international appeals for assistance, pre-existing vulnerabilities, and the capacity of national systems to respond effectively. In the Caribbean, each UN agency brings specialized expertise to disaster response. In the Jamaica context now, what we had was the International Organization for Migration, IOM, they led shelter rehabilitation, distributing nearly 1,000 house repair kits and completing over 300 home repairs in country in the areas that were most affected. The World Food Programme, WFP, implemented cash-based assistance programs, providing direct financial support to affected households. FAO focused on restoring agricultural and fisheries livelihoods, distributing fishing gear and planting materials while building capacity for climate resilient practices. UNICEF addressed multiple sectors: underwash, that's water, sanitation, and hygiene, through hygiene kits and water storage containers. Under nutrition, they provided micronutrient sachets, and under child protection, through psychosocial support and education by rehabilitating damaged schools. And I will get into a little bit more specifics about what was done by each agency. UNFPA and UN Women, excuse me, concentrated on gender-based violence prevention, training, and technology upgrades for response systems. Effective communication is something that is extremely important during emergencies, and the UN system communicates with affected countries through established channels with national authorities. For Hurricane Beryl, we participated in the National Humanitarian Assistance Committee, chaired by Jamaica's Ministry of Labor and Social Security. We coordinate very closely with regional bodies like CDEMA to ensure coherent regional response. And of course, we have our NEOC in Jamaica, which is the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management. And the UN agencies and the RCO have to work closely as well with ADPEM. Information management systems, particularly the 345W platform, help track who does what, where, when, and for whom, enabling better coordination and avoiding duplication of efforts. We also ensure that there are regular situation reports which provide clear insights into ongoing operations, keeping all entities informed about the response activities, needs, assessments, and gaps. Hurricane Beryl, as I said, it provides a little bit of a case study into what the response mechanism looked like. So it was unprecedented, the earliest Category 5 Atlantic hurricane on record, impacting Jamaica on July 3, 2024, with winds of 140 to 160 miles per hour. The devastation was widespread across southern coastal areas, particularly in Clarendon, Manchester, and St. Elizabeth. The impact was severe. The National Water Commission reported that 70% of the customers were initially without water, 60% from JPS were initially without electricity, and there were over 1,800 people in shelters, and approximately 160,000 people were directly impacted, including some 37,000 children. The UN system immediately activated its emergency response mechanisms, and the government of Jamaica declared a state of emergency and issued an international appeal for assistance, which triggered the mobilization of the support. Now, several factors influence deployment decisions. The UN will assess the severity of impact through rapid needs assessments, considering affected populations, any infrastructure damage, and disruption of essential services. Vulnerability indicators include pre-existing conditions such as poverty levels and infrastructure quality. For Hurricane Beryl, Jamaica's southern coastal areas were identified as particularly vulnerable. And while Jamaica has robust disaster management frameworks, the scale of Beryl's impact necessitated the kind of support. So while there wasn't the flash appeals that were done by government, the mobilization of the UN system, especially those agencies that were already in country and working with the pre-existing disaster management frameworks, were able to be mobilized and partner very quickly, enabling efficient coordination and resource deployment. Resource availability, including the UN SURF funding and technical experts, that was very critical too, and they were quickly mobilized based on the needs assessments. So across the programs that were implemented, I would have touched on some of them already with the beneficiaries. When we did a sort of review of the SURF implementation, and we wanted to hear from the agencies, you know, what went well for them, what were some things that could be improved. Here's what we understood. And I think it's important for me to situate this part of the conversation here, especially with regards to GIS and its importance in emergency contexts. Our UN agencies have said to us that where data is available and can quickly be shared, then the response rate is going to be faster, and there's going to be an easier way of getting to those who are most in need of support. We found that we had where houses had been identified sometimes in preliminary assessments, where the GIS location was not provided, it was sometimes a challenge to go back and locate those households and provide the response that they needed. So that is something that we find to be critical going forward, making it easier to map and track. And we have the team from UNDAC and OCHA who stand ready to provide that kind of support to the governments, not only in Jamaica, but across the region whenever it is necessary and needed, to ensure that the government systems and national systems are so built that there are not data sharing delays, and GIS integration is indeed strengthened. UN partners have offered ODPEM support to enhance GIS and data systems. And we also noted that for one of our programs, they do express their regret for not being able to come and share themselves today. But the World Food Program, when they were implementing their projects, one of the things that they found was that utilizing local communication networks, and while we have high mobile phone penetration rates, sometimes you still have to go into communities and find where people are. You'd still have to do the sealed envelope thing to make sure people could believe and legitimize the actual offer of cash assistance and cash support for them, and utilizing systems like or usual money transfer systems to get things into the hands of people. But the data is extremely important. We know that from the UN agencies, there's the continued urging and supporting of Caribbean governments to engage with the UN system early, to strengthen digital tools, integrate disability inclusion, focus on the pre-positioning of essential supplies, and prioritize simulation training. And the UN stands ready to support with all of these. When assessments are done, and there are gaps and there are needs. Yes.
You have about 3 minutes left.
That is perfect. I will literally only take one more. So thank you. When assessments are done and there are gaps identified and needs identified, the reality is that the UN is capable of moving pretty quickly and getting the responses in place and being able to support the countries. And so our coordination system runs deep. We work closely with the ministries of foreign affairs in all the Caribbean countries, and we stand as an excellent partner to ensure that whether it is technical assistance, financial assistance, and even support with scaling up data and the humanitarian assistance, the UN system stands ready in emergency contexts to support the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kimisha. Thank you very much for being on time for us. We now move on to Zachary Foltz, who will be telling us about the International Charter on Space and Major Disasters activation for Hurricane Beryl. Zachary, are you there and ready?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll share my screen now.
Yes.
So, yes, my name is Zachary Foltz, and I work at Acri ST in France. It's a remote sensing company, and I support the European Space Agency on the activities of the International Charter. So I will go ahead and give a brief overview of the Charter, and then I will discuss as well about the response to Hurricane Beryl. So the International Charter was created in 2000. So it's been 25 years now. This year will be the 25th anniversary. So we've had 980 activations over the last 25 years in 143 countries. There are 17 charter members, which you can see here. So the charter members are those who are contributing both satellite data and as well human resources to the charter initiative. So we have 17 charter members, as I mentioned, in all across the world, and they're all contributing in some fashion. These are the charter satellites. So we have satellites from the 17 charter members, as well as some commercial satellites from other data distributors. I have here highlighted in green the high resolution optical satellites of the charter. So these might be of interest to the Caribbean countries in the case of looking at damage detection for hurricane events. These are the disaster types that are covered by the International Charter. So mostly natural events like earthquakes, fires, and floods, as well as some other events like landslides and, of course, hurricanes, and as well volcanoes. As well as some man-made events that may be applicable to some Caribbean countries as oil spills, and as well industrial accidents. We have had I have a slide later in the presentation showing the activation for the oil spill in Trinidad and Tobago. And then as well, the charter cannot be activated for war or armed conflicts, or as well slow onset disasters such as droughts. So the charter is specifically for disaster response only, and is providing this Earth observation and satellite data, and as well some resources to countries for disaster response. So the mechanisms to activate the charter, as I mentioned, there are the 17 charter members, and then there are as well authorized users. So an authorized user of the charter means that this is a body that has applied and has been accepted as a user, and they are either a national disaster management organization or a civil defense organization from the country, and they must be the mandated agency to manage disasters in the country. So this is the main mechanism to activate the charter, which would be a direct activation by an authorized user. So you simply have to just log online and submit the request through the online form on the charter website. As well as possible, if a country is not an authorized user, they can still benefit from a charter activation through a few different ways. One way is from an authorized user from another country. So if a neighboring country is an authorized user of the charter, they can activate for a neighboring country. So this may be applicable to Caribbean countries, as we have several in the Caribbean, but also several which are not yet authorized users. So this could be an option for some countries. Then as well, we have the United Nations. So we have several cooperating bodies within the United Nations who are permitted to activate the charter for countries which do not have authorized users. So this would be UN-USA and UNITAR-UNICED. And we have had this case in the Caribbean as well for some countries, including for Hurricane Beryl in Jamaica. And the last one is through Sentinel Asia. So this is for Asian countries, and Sentinel Asia is a regional collaboration between Asian countries. So not applicable to a Caribbean region, but just another cooperating body with the charter. So here's the map of authorized users of the charter. There are 104 authorized users total in 93 countries, and 54 of them have come from the Universal Access Initiative, which is what I mentioned with the countries being able to apply through the website for authorized user status. Yes, these are the countries, and then on the next slide I have specifically the countries in the Caribbean. So over the last year or so, I would say, we have definitely expanded the reach of the charter in the Caribbean thanks to the help of SEDIMA, as well as the United Nations organizations, and as well the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, who really helped us to sort of understand the dynamic of disaster response in the Caribbean. So we appreciate the efforts there as well. I was able to participate along with my supervisor in the CDM 13 conference in St. Kitts last December. So this is as well an excellent opportunity to raise awareness for the charter and also, again, understand the dynamic of disaster response in the Caribbean. So these are the current authorized users that we have. Dominican Republic, Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, Belize, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Cuba. So, of course, this is a good accomplishment already, but we would like as well for more countries to apply their nationally mandated disaster response organizations to apply for authorized user status of the charter. So this will help you gain direct access to the data and will help you to be better prepared for the disaster when it comes to Earth observation data standpoint. You can see as well all of the countries in Central America and most of the countries in South America are as well authorized users. So the Caribbean region in general is improving in coverage, I would say. Again, to become an authorized user,
We have about 3
as I
minutes
mentioned,
left.
you must be the national disaster management organization that's mandated to handle disasters in the country. There must be a certain capacity to download and use the maps that are going to be produced with the charter data, and you must be able to submit and pursue the activation in English with the members of the charter and as well the other organizations that will be working on the project. So it's quite simple. You just have to fill the application form online on the charter website. There is a step-by-step process, and there will be an application. And then if the application is approved, then there will be just a training, a one-day online training. And then after that, your country will be able to submit requests to the charter. Also, it's recommended that you have that there is a sort of GIS team that is associated with your organization. So I know we have the GIS team from Jamaica who presented earlier. So this will be an excellent pathway to becoming an authorized user as well, and you'll have direct access to the data and the maps that are being produced by the GIS team. So this is the ideal workflow for being an authorized user and having a charter activation, to have this GIS team to sort of process the data, and then you have direct communication with the National Disaster Management Organization. So this is how to become an authorized user. There's additional information here, step by step. I can share these slides as well after with everyone who's in attendance today. The registration form is also available in French and Spanish, as well as English. So yes, that's how to become an authorized user. Now, just quickly, you can see here the distribution of charter activations around the world. So you see the light blue dots would be for cyclones. And you can see there's a grouping of cyclones around the Caribbean region and the Gulf of Mexico.
Hi, Zachary.
Moving on to the
About 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay.
Yes, please.
This is the response to Hurricane Beryl. There were 4 activations in total. There were 2 activations which were activated in anticipation of the event. So this is possible with the charter. You can, it is possible to activate the charter in advance of a storm arriving, so that the data can be collected. Also, pre-event data can be collected in addition to data that's after the event. So these are the 2 activations. The first one was activated by Unitar Unisat, and the second was activated by Hazard Management Cayman Islands, which is the authorized user of the Cayman Islands, which I believe I missed on the previous slide. But this was a value-added product, the map product that was created based on the charter data in Jamaica. This was made by Unitar, and this is showing the satellite detected floodwater in red here. Then there was also an activation in Venezuela, which was activated by Abai, who is a charter member, and then the Civil Protection of Venezuela, which is the authorized user. This was a product generated from this activation before and after flooding along this area. And then lastly, Hurricane Beryl in the Dominican Republic. So the Dominican Republic was an authorized user, so they activated the charter directly. And this was one of the products generated by actually the Argentinian Space Agency, who was joining on this activation to help out. And here we have some satellite detected floodwaters based on high resolution optical imagery. So that is all. There's also the ESA Charter Mapper, which I wanted to quickly introduce. I have like a video as well, if we have time, like 1 or 2 minutes.
Yes, you may proceed with the video as well.
Okay, thanks. Just to quickly say, this was the slide about the oil spill in Trinidad and Tobago. So this was a screenshot from the platform, which we can give measure the distance on the satellite image to give a approximation of how the oil has spread. But for now, I will proceed with the video. So this video I showed at the CDM 13 conference, and this is just showing how you can use the Charter platform to compare pre and post event imagery. And this was in the case of Hurricane Beryl in Grenada. So this is imagery from the satellite, which is called Pleiad Neo. It is the highest resolution satellite that we have in the Charter. So it's an excellent satellite to be used for these before and after analysis. So with this, you can really get down to the building level to see the damages, and we have this slider, which you can use to compare the pre and post event imagery. So this is called the Charter Mapper, and this is where all the data of the Charter is fed from the Charter activation. So all of the satellite data is fed into this environment where you can view and process the data, and then as well make maps that can be sent to the Disaster Management Agency and the Civil Protection. So that is essentially all. There's just a few more examples here of Grenada, but maybe I can just skip forward a bit. Yeah, you can see this on the left panel. These are the two images that are being compared here. So there's one from July 6th and then one from March 2nd. So there was an image taken before the hurricane season that the French Space Agency, who manages this satellite, they wanted to take images over the Caribbean to have some pre-event data before the hurricane season. So it came in useful for this activation. So that is all for my presentation, I think.
Thank you very much, Zachary. Remember, participants, to put your questions into the chat so that we may attend to them in the question and answer segment, which is coming up. Right now, we go to Map Action. Louis Velasquez will be presenting on Map Action's response in the Caribbean to Hurricane Beryl. So let's proceed, Louis.
Thank you very much. My name is Luis Velasquez, and I'm the head of Geospatial Services at Map Action. For those of you that don't know who Map Action is, so we're an NGO that deploys geospatial capacity and data scientist specialists, mainly to humanitarian crises around the world. We've been around for the best part of 22 years now, and have attended approximately about 140 emergencies worldwide. We tend to go into the Caribbean and support in the Caribbean. We have worked with CERIMA, in partnership with CERIMA, for many years now, approximately 10 years, as part of responses as well as capacity building with them. And with regards to Beryl, so what I'll do is give you a little bit of how we got to be in Beryl, as part of the emergency response, how we work and how and this sort of things that we saw at the end. So obviously the process started back in July 2024. So as part of our work, so this is our cycle work. We're an organization that is mainly volunteer-led. So as members of staff, is 10 of us at the moment, but we have a group of about 70 volunteers, all of them geospatial specialists or data scientists. So back then, Map Action issued an alert check for the hurricane when it made landfall. And then within 24 hours, we were already set up to deploy. We were deployed directly to Barbados. We did this through CEDIMA. CEDIMA was the group that requested the support of Map Action in first instance. We sent 2 volunteers for the UK and 1 person from Montserrat, which I believe is in the call, Laverne. So she responded on the 4th of July as part of the mission. As part of the work we were asked to do with CEDIMA, it was in the support of the coordination and managing the response to the hurricane. We were looking to ensure that critical information was available to decision makers and responders in the ground. When we got to Barbados, the team of 3 was split, with 2 of the members staying in St. Vincent, working very closely with CEDIMA Rapid Needs Assessment team, and the other person of the team was deployed to Grenada as part of the NADMA. So that was Laverne. As part of our volunteer team, so what we did at that moment, apart from St. Vincent and Grenada, we had a call from the UNDAC team from the United Nations within 2 days to also send a team to Jamaica to support the coordination efforts in that part. So that then meant that we sent 2 more volunteers. So the total team from Map Action was 5 members as part of the field team. We were in 3 countries, so St. Vincent, Grenada, and Jamaica. And we had 7 people working remotely as well as part of the emergency. The idea here was that we were trying to cover as much of the 24 hours as we could in the first 2 weeks of the process. So this is a little bit how it worked. So we split the process in 2 phases for each of the places we were at, covering from the 4th of July until the 16th of July. As you can see, we relied on local efforts, so of agencies like NEMO and CEDIMA, as well as NADMA, to be able to provide resources for the volunteers that go and deploy. And we try to embed within the team, so we don't do our separate thing. What we try to do is form part of the coordination and then provide all the geospatial analysis that we have and experience we have gained through the different responses we have been part of. So working collaboratively as part of the Beryl response, these are some of the things we're working on. So initially the building damage assessments. So this was initially done by was done through the Copernicus Emergency Mapping Service, and it was initially done through for Union Island. This map was used by the NEMO team, the CEDIMA RNIT, and as well as WFP teams, mainly for reference and for them to understand what the needs were. We work on some shelter data information. In first instance, the shelter information was coming from the IOM group for the United Nations, but when our team was embedded within NEMO, we started to receive access to live shelter occupancy that was coming from the Ministry of Education in St. Vincent. So that kind of changes the products and the way that coordination gets done. We work on the needs assessment as well as part of the Coastal Zone Management Unit, visiting Union Island. And we help to assess and create information in some of the maps I think you've seen of what were happening, and we're including the photos so that the people making decisions were able to deliver the aid to the people that needed the most in a timely fashion. We equally, as part of the process, we try to build a capacity enhancement process, which is the idea of when we work either with NEMO or CEDIMA, whoever it is that we're working with, and they're specialists, we also try to encourage them to support a little bit of what we do. We work with OPEM in Jamaica, to include things like data sharing and advice on information management techniques that we have learned in the past and that we use as part of our capacity enhancement processes. And we also took part in people in need assessment, the population of people in need assessment, which was initially done through the remote ANA cell, so the assessment and analysis cell of the coordination by the United Nations. And that was mainly done by, for Jamaica. And we learned quite a lot of that process, which is one of the conclusions I'll give you at the end. So for St. Vincent, some of the maps we created. So this is what I was saying earlier about the shelter occupancy that we're looking at. So this is the sort of products we were producing. We produced several products. I just chose an example of each. The information that was helping to coordinate the efforts that were happening. So from Grenada, it's a little bit of the same. So the shelter product is the product that we created the most because it was the one that was getting updated more frequently, and it's the one that was helping the coordination in country. For Jamaica, we looked at places where assessments were going to be carried out initially because when we looked at people in need or people potentially affected, a lot of the efforts were concentrated mainly on the side of the country. Where the Northwest also have quite a significant amount of people in need. So this is what this sort of program was producing locally and what we were able to see. So it's kind of going from these big data sets that get produced by remote sensing of things like world population, for example, where we're trying to assess things remotely, but it is the work of the local teams, the NIMOs, the CDMAs, these local organizations that help really inform the coordination. And we are there with them so that we can produce this type of outputs to inform it. Some of the agencies that we worked with in the response, so as you can see, we worked through CDMA, through NIMO, to NADMA, to ANDAC, to PEJO. We look local governments, so St. Vincent, the Ministry of Education, the mobilization unit. So we did, as part of the response, which was quite different from many of the responses, especially because obviously the nature of the Caribbean being a group of islands, is very encouraging to see that this can be possible and it's a good effort. And obviously you guys in the Caribbean are very, very good at organizing yourselves and trying to make the most of the resources are available. So it was really, really humbling for us to be part of that group and being able to bring our experience part of it. Some of the conclusions that we got to as part of this response in the Caribbean from previous responses we have been to, so it's the ability to deploy rapidly. So as I said, we are a group of volunteers, all of us mainly based in the UK, but we have a contingency in the Caribbean, which was very satisfactory to see that that group was able to deploy. Connections with government organizations were key to this response, something we hadn't seen that significant in the past. But in this particular response for Beryl, and I guess for future responses, I think this is where the key is at. We also realized that because we have worked with CDMA for such a long time, and the Caribbean has changed quite a lot in terms of organizations and what the capacity is and what people are enabled to do now, that it would be good for us to then look at different focal points now, especially at country level, where the efforts can be coordinated slightly better from our part as well. And we go to these emergencies not to do with that to not just to do in our ways. What we like to do is we are kind of a vehicle through which people can do things, and we are there to support, not to mandate, not to coordinate. We're there to ensuring that local and regional agencies can do the work at the best they aptitude. We work back with ODPEM and NIMO again, and we're trying to build relationships. So especially NIMO it's not very new, but it's a newish organization. So trying to build these relationships, trying to nurture it a little bit more. We do realize that there is still a space for information management and geo capacity enhancement. And we believe that the best way to achieve this is how we trial it and how we worked in this response, which is the idea of us as volunteers being embedded with people that work for these local organizations and DMAs and work with them and learn through doing. I think it's much better than sometimes just doing a classroom-based training. We should make the most of this awful situations when we're responding, and then take this as also vehicles through learning. So that was a good conclusion from our part. And lastly, is the global pros can generate significant errors when working in Caribbean islands. And what I refer to here, and it's something that we have to be very careful in responses, is the use of information, things like when we look at remote sensing information. So say, for example, I can give you the example of the world population in Jamaica, where we're looking at assessing people in need. World population values are, they're good because obviously there is a lack of data in terms of census, and it's better to have some data than not having any. But also there is a overestimation, or there is places where people just don't get counted. We tend to miss them, and there tend to be people in need. So when we're responding, we need to be slightly mindful of these processes. And at the end of the day, there is no very substitute to the field experience. So sometimes I know time is the essence, but also we need to give space to processes to take place to make sure that we're delivering the aid correctly. And that is kind of our approach and what we did. And yeah, I'll be happy to take any questions eventually. I will check the chat anyway in case somebody has any questions, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Louis, for your presentation. We now have our discussion and questions and answers and summary of the presentations so far. I call on Michelle St. Clair, member of the CARIGEO Steering Committee, and Paul Riley, who will be assisting Michelle in leading the discussion and question and answer.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon or good morning to everyone. Thanks to our presenters for your insightful contributions today. We've heard firsthand how regional agencies and national authorities and international partners came together in the face of Hurricane Beryl in 2024. So we'll now open for questions. I will invite Paul to share if there are any questions in the chat, and then I will provide a summary afterwards. So over to you, Paul.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Yes, some wonderful presentations this morning into this lunchtime. And we can tell by the number of questions. I think it'll just be easier for me to work from the most current and work backwards. So for Simone, we have a question that has come in from, oh, I've lost my order here. I apologize for this. Actually, let's start with Zachary Fultz, if I may. I know, Simone, you had asked about becoming an authorized user as part of the International Charter for Space and Major Disasters, but I believe Zach did get to that in his presentation with the 2 slides, so I think that we're good there. And then Zachary, you got a lot of compliments on the tools, and there was even a suggestion for an online flood calculation tool. But David Cole did have a question. He's asking if you'd be willing to elaborate on some of the main types of data and products provided by the Charter. For example, what is the range of satellite imagery resolution available? Are all the data and products downloadable, and are some only accessible through the chart mapper? Over to you, Zachary. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, thanks for that. And thank you to David for the question. Yeah, sorry, we didn't get to elaborate too much on that, but essentially it's all Earth observation satellite data, and it's a range of optical and radar products, ranging from medium to very, very high resolution. As I showed in the video, was the highest resolution that we have, which is the Pléiades Neo satellite from the French Space Agency. This is around 50 centimeters resolution. But most of the satellites, the high resolution optical satellites, are running at about 1 meter resolution. So these are the ones we are typically getting for most activations. This would be as well the World UN-GGIM satellites, which are provided by USGS through the commercial data providers. And as far as the radar products, we have TerraSAR-X from the German Space Agency, which is a high-resolution radar satellite, as well as the RadarSat Constellation mission from Canadian Space Agency. So there's quite a range of these Earth observation products. And to answer your question about the charter mapper, the project manager and the value adders of the activation have access to the charter mapper. So what that means is when the authorized user activates the charter, they have the option to nominate a project manager. They can either delegate this to the executive secretary of the charter to do, or they can nominate one themselves. So if they are in connection with a GIS team or a GIS agency, or if they have a partnership in that way, they can directly nominate a project manager from that agency to handle all of the data that is coming in. And if not, then they can delegate this to somebody else, like me, for example. So then these people have access to the charter mapper. And in the charter mapper, you can process the data, visualize the data, and you can as well download the data to be used in your own GIS tools if you'd like. So there is a full suite of products in the charter mapper. As you mentioned, there is a flood mapping tool, which works with several different radar satellites. And as well, the most recent addition to the charter mapper is the map production tool. And that actually allows you to generate a map product using either an image or a result that you used in the charter mapper. So it's really an end-to-end service. So we like to promote that as much as possible, especially in regions with maybe some limited resources. As well, just to make one last comment, I am available as well to do some trainings for this platform to all the Caribbean countries. If we want, we could organize an online webinar with several different Caribbean countries to do a training on this platform. So let me know if you all would be interested in that. And if you have any more questions, I'm available to answer.
Thank you, Zachary, for that response. We really appreciate the offer as well. Thank you. Is Kamisha still on the line with us? We have a question from you, Kamisha. David Cole has been, he's very busy with some questions, and he wanted to ask you, you mentioned the 345W platform, and he wanted to know if this tool is available to all member states, or is it just for internal UN use only?
Kamisha tendered apologies because she has another session that she had to rush back to. So she says that she will respond to the questions. We just need to send her the questions and she'll respond to them so that
Thank you, Simone.
With the requisite
Thank
persons.
you. Okay, wonderful. So while you're on, Simone, I do have a question from you. David picked on you as well, and he wanted to ask if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about the human capacity building program modules that you mentioned in your presentation. Oh, I think you're on mute, Simone.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Wonderful, good. Thanks for the question, David. So yes, we have a NERGIS Human Capacity Development Program. We are planning to revamp it, but what the program has involved is the building of capacity with respect to the use of global navigation satellite systems. We've transitioned from that more so into the use of different applications that are then used on tablets or phones to do the data collection process. But we have realized based on deployments, not just locally, but to other Caribbean countries, that being versed in the use of global navigation satellite systems is also very helpful, depending on where the deployment happens. And so in some cases, we have to do both in terms of use of GNSS equipment and also use of the mobile apps. Apart from that, spatial analysis, so developing of skills with respect to persons who do not have background where GIS is concerned, a limited background, helping them where that is concerned, but also training of the entire team. And we do refreshers from intervals with respect to the conducting of initial damage assessments. And with the initial damage assessments, we get a lot of support from the ODPM with respect to trained persons, because this is in the USAID's IDA methodology. And so the ODPM is key with respect to organizing those trainings for the team so that we are armed with being able to identify when we go to an area and we look at the buildings that are in the area, assessing what level of damage the buildings are, because that is key. Apart from that, looking at infrastructure that has been impacted by the event and other things that are important with respect to reporting. And then all of those various details then feeds into what we provide, which then feeds into the preparation of the situation reports. So I'm so happy to see Anna on with us, who deals with a lot of the reporting mechanism with respect to the preparation of the situation reports, herself and her team. And so with that, they rely on the NRGIS team to provide support where that is concerned. And so the team members are prepared in terms of being trained in those areas. So we do rudimentary refreshers in terms of IDA. So very soon for the upcoming hurricane season, we're going to be doing that to ensure that everybody is on the same page in terms of how we do those assessments. And we're so happy to hear that Zach has offered with respect to facilitating a training for the Caribbean with respect to the international charter. So we'll launch forward in terms of reaching out and following up with respect to organizing trainings accordingly. All right. Thank you. And if I could, Paul, I forgot to mention, I'm so sorry I forgot to mention how key it was working with, because the data that was provided by International Charter was utilized by NRGIS in the NEOC. And with that also, that would have fed into the situation reports that were generated on a daily basis. And also when map action came, we would have collaborated a lot. So data that would have been captured by our team in the field, different from those who are mapping in the NEOC, those data sets would have also been shared with map action to aid their efforts when they came on board to the NEOC. So the importance of partnership and collaboration was key throughout the entire process with respect to the whole provision of geospatial support. All right, back over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you. I just want to check in with Michelle St. Clair and with McCarthyan. I know we're running close on time. I do have a couple more questions, but I just wanted to check before I ask the next question.
I think we can take one more question and then head into our summary and close.
Okay, thank you, McCarthyan. So if Valerie can hear us, Valerie gave us a wonderful presentation on UAVs near the beginning of our webinar, and I know she was in the process of answering questions in the chat when she started to experience technical difficulties. And I do have a number of questions for you, but I'll ask this one because I think this one may be of interest to all of our participants. If you can hear me, Valerie.
I am.
Okay, wonderful. I wanted to ask you, the question that came from David Cole was whether or not there had been any assessments on whether or not there have been any assessments done or will be done on the regulatory landscape related to UAVs within the Caribbean states, and are there any plans to recommend or work with the participating states on improving regulations?
Thanks for that, Paul. And David. So in terms of assessment of the regulatory landscape, yes, during the program, there were some preliminary, sorry, I can't talk this morning, regulatory review to really understand the landscape of UAS operations across the different participating states. And that showed us that they were at different levels of maturity. And to just quote what one of the civil aviation authorities said to me was that, you know, it's a wild, wild west and they can't keep up with the advancement of the technology. And so this is something that is very much needed. And so moving forward, the program will intend to continue to work with those national stakeholders, especially the civil aviation authority, to identify the gaps and to recommend improvements. And we have definitely recommended as consultants and encouraged alignment with these national civil aviation authorities to foster that kind of collaboration that is necessary to really drive the policy and the data governance that is going to be required, as well as, you know, the safety, because that's a big deal as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Valerie, for that. And we'll be sure to take all the questions that have not been addressed or asked and be sure we get responses to everybody following the webinar. So back over to you, Michelle.
Great. Thank you very much. Given the time, I will shorten my summary and just share for you some of the key points that came out of today's session. And just making sure you can see my slides.
Yes, we can.
Yes. So I took away 4 key points to summarize today. With respect to coordination and preparedness, we had examples from Jamaica and St. Vincent that highlighted the benefit of in-country coordination to support early activation of emergency protocols and centralized communication and for post-disaster assessment. Also, with respect to geospatial information and in emergency response, I was heartened by and we could see the incorporation of the UAS for comprehensive disaster management as an upcoming program of SEDIMA. And I think this represents a positive initiative to incorporate and improve disaster risk reduction in the Caribbean. We also heard quite a bit from our partners in terms of international and regional support. In particular, Kamisha shared quite a bit about the UN agencies working along many fronts to support disaster response, and many resources exist, such as those from Action and the Disaster Charter, and the Caribbean must take advantage of this support. And finally, with respect to partnerships and capacity building, building local capacity and fostering regional technical cooperation, the webinar encouraged ongoing investment in training, in regional knowledge exchange, as we heard Valerie speak to, and institutional linkages to strengthen disaster risk reduction. And I just want to end with a call to action. As we close today's important conversation, one thing is clear: the future of disaster resilience in the Caribbean and the Americas lies not just in how we respond to crises, but in how well we prepare together. Hurricane Beryl reminded us that coordination and communication, a point that Michelle from St. Vincent highlighted in her presentation, are critical, and that geospatial data, technology, and partnerships are at the heart of that capability. But preparation is not a one-time effort. It demands continuous investment in capacity, trust building across institutions, and the integration of geospatial thinking into every stage of the disaster risk management. Let this webinar not be the end of a discussion, but the beginning of renewed commitment. We call on you, on all of you as country representatives, members of regional bodies, international partners, and technical experts to take the lessons from today forward. Strengthen your national systems, consider becoming a member or authorized user of the Charter, build your regional networks, share your data, and most importantly, stay engaged. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle and Paul, for our discussion and summary. We now go to Simone, who will be delivering our vote of thanks and closing remarks. Thank you, Simone. Let's proceed.
Thank you so much, Mark. It is my distinct pleasure on behalf of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management Regional Committee for the Americas, the Caribbean Geospatial Development Initiative Steering Committee, in collaboration with the UN-GGIM's Working Group on Geospatial Information for Disaster Risk Management, and the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean region, to extend immense gratitude to all our esteemed speakers, our specially invited guests, and all our attendees who would have given of their invaluable time and efforts today as we sought to foster greater awareness and build member states' capacity through the hosting of this webinar on preparation, response, and recovery, lessons learned from Hurricane Beryl. We sincerely hope that you have benefited from the sharing of lessons learned by the impacted member states, St. Vincent and Grenadines and Jamaica, the regional and international agencies who provided support during the various phases of Hurricane Beryl, and also importantly, the utilization and the importance of geospatial technologies, geospatial information, and Earth observation data to support the various phases of the event, and in particular, host the event given the significant level of impact. As has been emphasized with each and every presentation, this webinar is quite timely in preparation for the upcoming 2025 hurricane season, which actually commences in exactly 2 weeks. So we will share accordingly, background information on all our presenters, contact information accordingly, the recordings and the presentation slides post this event so that you have the requisite resources to refer to and to use accordingly to support your preparations. Additionally, as we prepare for this hurricane season, we invite you to register for the 3-day 2025 UN OCHA Hurricane Season Preparedness event, which starts today, commences today, and ends on Thursday. And so they would have tendered their apologies for not being able to join us for this session, given that event. So I've posted in the chat the link. Please do go on, please do register, and please do attend accordingly, depending on your calendar. And with that, benefit from the resources that they will also be sharing over the next 3 days. CARIGEO and UN-GGIM Working Group Geospatial Information for Disaster Risk Management looks forward to facilitating future collaborations that benefit this region and all other regions, the wider Americas region and all other regions, and all member states on the global level. I thank you. Please do have a good day, and thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today.
Before we end, can we have a picture, please?
Right, so everyone who is able to, let's see how well we do this. Turn on your camera if you have one available, and let me see. Fabian, I'd like your assistance in getting that photo together. I'm not very familiar with WebEx, so I can't exactly manage my layout very well yet. Okay, I think I've got something for my layout.
Yeah, the layout that we can do is the layout that the grind and everybody
The
is
grid layout,
over there.
yeah.
That's the layout that we can do.
Okay.
If somebody can.
I'm only seeing 1, 2, 3.
I think we may have to take multiple shots.
I'm only seeing 12 images. 12
Yeah,
rectangles.
there is the videos, the participants without videos, they are hiding, but now you can see them. Let me know if you can see them.
And
Okay.
I'm hoping somebody's taking this picture.
I'm only seeing
There's 1, 2, 3, 10 cameras, 11 with you, Markathian.
yes. That's all I'm seeing as well.
Other
Yes.
people are not without videos, so yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna just focus on the people who is with video, so you can take the photo
Yes.
of it.
We'll just take those with video.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. All right. So goodbye, everyone. Thank you for coming. See you at some other gathering, and let's hope we have a safe and pleasantly boring hurricane season.
Yes.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Gonna stop the recording now.
Yes, you may stop the recording. Oh, support.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Thanks to you to having me in this important meeting.
Yes,
Yes.
very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.